Welcome, everyone. The ICMA Learning Lab is pleased to present this online education program, a roadmap for community engagement in small cities and towns, brought to you by Community Heart and Soul. For technical assistance, please email learning@icma.org. Today's presentation will last up to 60 minutes and includes a question and answer opportunity, so please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. During Q&A, our presenters will answer as many questions as time allows. It is my pleasure to introduce today's speakers, Sarah Leitner, the Senior Program Director at Community Heart and Soul, George Needles, the Borough Manager of Upper Chichester, Pennsylvania, and Taylor Smith, the Economic Development Director of Thomaston, Georgia. Speakers, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julian. And hello, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad that you've been able to join us today. My name is Sarah Leitner, and on behalf of Community Heart and Soul, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. So I want to begin with just a simple truth. Every municipal leader wants to leave their community stronger, more connected, and better positioned for the future. But leading a town or city just really isn't easy. And as municipal leaders, you are juggling complex challenges like aging infrastructure, housing, public safety, revitalization, economic development. I feel like I could go on. And you're doing this all with limited time and sometimes even more limited resources. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by urgent day-to-day problems and demands, while really wishing that you had a clearer sense of what your community truly wants and needs, you're not alone. And at Community Heart and Soul, we believe that everyone deserves to have a voice in shaping their town's future. And not just the loudest voices, everyone. And we understand how challenging it is to engage and build trust with communities while you're also balancing those urgent issues and limited resources. So we've built a proven process to help you make that happen. So here's how it works. Community Heart and Soul is a resident-driven process that helps towns build a brighter future with their residents, not just for them. And the program is built on 3 primary principles: focus on what matters most, involve everyone, and play the long game. So now let's look at what those principles really mean. So first, starting with focusing on what matters most. So in Community Heart and Soul, we use story gathering as our method for identifying what residents truly care about most. And then those stories are turned into what we call heart and soul statements. And those statements really guide town officials and residents to make decisions that are rooted in those shared priorities, the things that matter most to the community. Next, for involve everyone, Community Heart and Soul reaches deep into the community to identify who lives, who works, and who plays there. And instead of expecting people to come to town hall, Community Heart and Soul takes the engagement to where everybody is, the places where people gather. In the neighborhoods, at schools and community centers, at parks and at farmers markets, wherever people come together, wherever they're congregating, this ensures that everyone has a chance to be heard. And finally, that third principle of play the long game. So Heart and Soul is not a one-time initiative or a one-and-done process. It's what we call an ongoing practice that continues to help guide town planning, decision-making, and community development over time. So we know how hard it can be to engage residents while you're also managing the limited time and the resources. So that's why we provide the tools, the training, and the coaches to support you every step of the way along your heart and soul journey. So our process follows a 4-phase model that has structure. So the first part of the model is imagine. And this is what we also call the visioning phase. This is where heart and soul teams are formed in the community to build awareness, to build interest and commitment across the community. Next, we have connect. And this is where stories are gathered from residents by residents, leading to the development eventually of heart and soul statements that reflect what matters most to the people in the community. Next is plan. This is where action plans are developed to guide future town planning based on the values that were identified during the connect phase. And finally, act, which is where heart and soul statements are officially adopted and celebrated by local government, and then they're incorporated into comp plans, strategic plans, and also are used to guide decisions moving forward in the community. So our process is not one size fits all, but it is a framework that helps residents identify priorities and then in partnership with leaders like you, turn them into action. And another thing to note that's pretty important is that Community Heart and Soul is a nonpartisan process. There's no political, social, or religious agenda that's attached to Community Heart and Soul. And each town's priorities drive specific outcomes. And because it's led by residents in partnership with leaders like you and not outside consultants, it strengthens trust and relationships along the way. So now let's take a look at some of the outcomes that we have seen in more than 130 small cities and towns across the country who have adopted the practice of Community Heart and Soul. And these results span both social and economic benefits. Of course, you're going to hear really great stories from our panelists in just a moment, but here are just a few highlights of some of the outcomes that we've seen throughout the years. First, stronger connection and stronger trust between and among residents. And this is especially important, given how divided many of our communities have become. Second, a shared vision that's really rooted in what matters most to the community and the residents. Successful economic revitalization through local investment and through business growth. Increased civic participation and increased volunteerism in communities. Also, clearer community alignment that attracts new grants and community partnerships. Increased communities' pride and increased civility in communities. And then perhaps most importantly, stronger connections between leaders and the residents that you serve. Okay, so I've shared a little bit about what Community Heart and Soul is and how it works. But really the best way to understand the impact is to hear directly from leaders who've experienced heart and soul in their own communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and George to share their experiences. And again, thank you all for joining us today. Over to you, Taylor.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think Sarah really hits the nail on the head when it comes to what heart and soul is and how it can truly make a significant impacts into your community. My name is Taylor Smith. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city of Thomaston, Georgia. We are about an hour and 15 minutes south of Atlanta. We're the biggest city in a 7-county radius, about 10,000 within our city limits, 30,000 in our county, but we serve 150,000 within a 7-county radius. Only hospital, largest school system, largest industrial base, only Walmart, only Home Depot, only Chick-fil-A. We're the socioeconomic hub of West Central Georgia. That's what we are today, but for nearly a century, Thomaston was your quintessential textile community. And unfortunately, with the signing of NAFTA back in the 90s, by 2003, we had lost 4,000 jobs in a town of 10,000 people. We had lost 85% of our small business stock and 1,500 in population. And for many, many years, including my childhood, a lot of our citizens were taught, if you want to be successful, you have to leave this community because you can't do that here. If you want to make good money, have a good career, you've got to leave Thomaston. That opportunity does not exist here. Whether it was the housing crisis, the recession, all of the challenges of the early 2000s into the 2010s, Thomaston was already economically depressed. And so I left in 2015 and went off to college and was not fortunate to be a part of the Community Heart and Soul process during 2018 to 2020. But Jennifer Rogers was the leader of our community at that time and worked with Heart and Soul to touch over 7,000 residents, and work through that process to really identify what makes Thomaston a special place, and then what can we do to continue to invest in the assets that make Thomaston special, because in today's world, you choose where you want to live. You can live anywhere. So why do people want to live in Thomaston, and what can we do to attract more residents, the type of residents that you want in your community? You move to the next one, Justin. So with that, like Sarah hit on, this process built trust. We were able to touch residents that had never been approached, had never been asked, why do you live here? What makes this community special to you? It really helped with uniting our community. Definitely had a better picture and a better story to tell of Thomaston once this process was over. The unfortunate side about our process is our process ended right at the beginning of 2020. And so COVID hit after that, and our kind of, list of projects, our 20 action item list, which Justin, I think that's the next slide, that sat on a shelf for nearly a year. I came back to Thomaston in 2021, and I sat down with my city manager and I asked him, so what do you want me to do? And he said, well, we have a list of 20 items that Heart and Soul came up with. So that's what you need to start working on to begin with. And, the exciting thing is, since I took over in 2021, we've been able to knock out a ton of these items and continue to work on knocking out the ones we haven't been able to touch yet. So excited to share some of that with you today. The first thing on the list was a downtown farmers market with open air stalls that sell locally grown and locally made products. That is not going to be completed by September 2025, but it is under construction, which is an exciting project for us. This is a $1.76 million facility right in the heart of downtown Thomaston. It's a 120 by 60 covered pavilion with downtown restrooms and concession areas. It's going to have 32 parking spots. It's going to have raised garden beds, and it's going to have our first electric vehicle charging station. So we are super excited about this project. And yes, we call it a farmer's market, but this is a multi-use facility. One of our challenges that we've had is we have 3 highways running around our courthouse square. And so when we want to have small events, first Fridays, second Saturdays, we're always having to get road closure requests done with the Georgia Department of Transportation. This offers us the ability to provide those quality of life events right there in the heart of downtown Thomaston, right on a city street, on a city-owned property. So this is the #1 most requested item from our Heart and Soul initiative, and this will be up and operating in 2026. And that goes to show playing the long game, right? We ended our process 6 years ago. Or 5 years ago, and we are now just getting to this. But it took time finding those funding sources, going after grants, trying to figure out how do you make this work? How do you bring this type of facility to your community? Next. The #2, they wanted some national chains. We have like I said, we're the socioeconomic hub of this region, and there were certain national chains that it did not exist in our community. And there's still some that don't exist, like Arby's and Crystal. But since 2020, we have been able to open up a Chick-fil-A, a Longhorn, and a Starbucks in our community, and have several other national chains that have come in along our Highway 19 corridor, our U.S. highway that runs through our town. Next. The next thing people wanted, they wanted activities. They wanted things to do within our community. And so we've had a couple of new things happen. It's not shown here, but we have a historic single screen theater located in downtown Thomaston, and that property was purchased and has been reopened and shows your main movies every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Teed Off, which is the business located at the top, that is a virtual golf simulation facility. And I should have updated this with a picture of the interior, because they have done an incredible job building out that space. And then the Thomaston, that's an event center in downtown. That building is the old Cotton Alliance warehouse that dates back to the late 1800s, sat vacant for nearly 40 years, and was purchased last year and converting into this incredible 25,000 square foot event center right in the heart of downtown Thomaston. People wanted to see, the #8 item was developed an enhanced biking and walking trail system that creates a safe route and connects facilities, plus improves health. So Lakeside Park, the city actually had a reservoir that had a 1.6 mile paved walking trail around it that was closed to the public. So this was a very simple, low-hanging fruit item. We went out there, put a temporary parking pad in place, and we opened this up to the community. And so it has now been open 4 years. This fall is 4 years. We added some fitness stations out there. We opened it up for recreational fishing the year after. We hold our city fishing tournaments out there. And it's been an incredible addition and a small quality of life improvement for our citizens in our community. Build an amphitheater for our community. So this is one I'm pretty excited about. So the before picture is the bottom left. And so this was a defunct water feature that had always leaked. And the cost to demo this versus the cost to add the amphitheater space was a mere $10,000 difference. And so had to do some convincing alongside my public works director, but convinced our city manager that this was a great investment for Greatest Generation Park. So that's our largest park facility in our community. We also have added an 18-hole disc golf course to that park. We've worked with our elementary school. Our public works director's wife just happens to be the librarian at the elementary school. So we did a storyboard walk throughout the park where you can read the different pages to your children. And then when I came in 2021, we did not have a city brand or a city logo. And so worked with a local group to organize a new brand and logo for our community. And you can see that is painted right there on our water tower, which is the heart of the park. Another major investment we're currently doing right now, we're adding an additional 8 pickleball courts. Pickleball is taken over in Thomaston, and we're investing additional money towards pickleball facilities so that way we can eventually host some tournaments and use that as an economic driver for our community. Downtown facades and historic buildings. And so you'll see a couple of facade improvements after this, but I want to highlight this structure. This is the old R.E. Lee Math Building. We are currently in the process of working with the developer of this property to establish a national registry district in downtown Thomaston. So these developers, they only do historic tax credit projects. And unfortunately, we did not have a national registry in downtown. They actually donated the money to our Heart and Soul Inc. nonprofit, our local Thomaston Upson Heart and Soul Inc., and that is the conduit they're using for us to apply to be on the national registry. And so we're doing 2 separate applications, one for our high school campus, which is where our government complex is located and where this structure is, and then one for our downtown footprint. But this development alone would be a $3 million repurpose of the old R.E. Lee Math Building to be a 11-unit residential complex with a commercial space on the bottom floor. But hopefully we'll get the National Park Service to approve our national registry in downtown Thomaston as well, which will open the door for those historic tax credit projects and real investment to continue to pour into downtown Thomaston. Before and afters, these are just some of the pictures of our facade grant program following Heart and Soul. And when I came in, we established a facade grant program through our Downtown Development Authority. And so that's a matching $5,000 program that we offer to our downtown property and business owners. And with that, these entities can come in and they can actually get $5,000 per building. We've been able to do 24 facade grant projects since 2022 with an overall investment of over $400,000 in downtown Thomaston just in the facades. And Sarah hit on a point earlier about this being an economic driver for communities. I just want to hit on the figures of downtown Thomaston. And I think that next slide may show some of those, Justin, or maybe the one after that. There's a couple more. Look, we've had a ton of facade grant projects. You can see this one right here. So total investment in our DDA district, 2022, 2023, 2024. We have right at, over the last 4 years, over $30 million of investment within our Downtown Development Authority district, which is an incredible number for this community because I shared with you guys the figures that happened that occurred following the closure of our mills, right? The loss of 4,000 jobs, the loss of 1,500 in population, the loss of 85% of our small business stock. Look at the jobs created, look at the new business. Rural Zone is a program that's provided by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, which offers state tax credits towards the revitalization of downtowns. And we were able to apply for that program using some of the data that was done as a part of the Heart and Soul process back in 2021. We were designated a Georgia Rural Zone community in 2022, and that's a 5-year designation. At this point, we have 38 Rural Zone projects in downtown Thomaston, which is more projects than any community has ever had since the program has been conceived, which was well over a decade ago. I think they've had over 100 communities come through the program, and we have more than any community that has ever gone through the program. So doing the work and getting the data and getting the information from your community is one thing, but I think the biggest piece when it comes to, the Heart and Soul Initiative, the master plan, all the things that we've done over the last few years. You got to have someone to implement. You have to have boots on the ground, someone that can take it and can run with it. Here's another one. We had a distilled spirits referendum. We were a dry county for over 90 years. And since then, we've been able to open 2 bottle shops in our community. And we set some pretty strict parameters. They've got a minimum 5,000 square foot of inventory they have to have. Or space they have to have. They have a minimum $500,000 worth of inventory they must have. We wanted to make sure to have bottle shops and something that our community was comfortable with and felt proud of. Go to the next one, Justin. Art and Soul Fest. This is a festival that has come out of the Heart and Soul Initiative. And the whole basis behind this festival is that they're incredibly talented artisan and craftsmen that are woven through the fabric of our community that just don't have the opportunity to showcase and share their talent with our community. And so we've been able to, over the last 5 years, build this festival up, have received several grants from the Georgia Council for the Arts. We have 6 art competitions that are tied in with this, including an international film competition with our historic theater in downtown, partnerships with the high school and the school system. It's been an incredible process for establishing the Art and Soul Festival. Go ahead. Rooftop dining. This is at restaurants with outdoor seating. They wanted a courtyard. You can go to the next one. This is another project that we've got this out to bid right now and should be breaking ground on phase 1, which is going to be the parking lot improvements and then some enclosed trash cans and grease traps for our restaurants in that area. And phase 2 is going to be establishing a pedestrian focused courtyard and gathering space for our visitors to downtown Thomaston. And then these are just some of the businesses that have come into downtown Thomaston in the last 5 years. So without the Heart and Soul Initiative, without the story, without being able to share, this is where we were, this is what we want, this is who we're going to become, right? And it's a mindset. For so many years, this community was stuck. This is who we are. This is all we're ever going to be. And I truly believe that going through the Heart and Soul process open a lot of people's eyes to the fact that if we want to be more, if we want to have more, if we want to do more, let's do it. It's up to us. And so that's one thing I can say about it. We've got more people invested today, as far as volunteering, just being a part of the process and supporting this community as it continues to evolve and just trying to help Thomaston become the best version of itself. And so I think with that, I'll pass it on to George. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
George, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much. I love hearing these stories about heart and soul communities, and I now have a new destination of where I'd like to travel and check out when I'm in Georgia. So thank you.
Come on, brother.
One of the things I think is most important about this program is that it does look different in every community. So the more and more stories I hear, the more and more I'm just like, wow, it's just so amazing to hear all these different stories and all these positive things going on. So Upper Chichester Township, our history and our story actually starts back in 1683. So we are one of the original land grants from William Penn when he came in and founded Pennsylvania. We were Chichester Liberty. Until 1683 was when we were originally founded. When we became Upper Chichester, there was a fight between 2 people, and then we got a Lower Chichester and an Upper Chichester. Who would have thought? But our beginnings are agricultural. With the railroad era, we became a vacation destination for people from Philadelphia. If you can't see where the on the map there on the right, we're in the far southeast corner of Pennsylvania. We border the state of Delaware, and we're in a place I'm sure some of you have heard of before, affectionately called Delco, Delaware County. We're one of the 49 municipalities there. So we kind of grew up in these different eras, right? So by 1930, we had about 3,743 people here. We were primarily farmland, starting to get a little bit more of like a industrial farmland, dairy farms, pig farms, things like that. Then, with the advent of the automobile, we kind of grew up a little bit more in the industrial area. We had another wave of population came in. We've developed there. That's your post-World War I, post-World War II housing. Then from like the 1960 to the 1990s, we really became that quintessential suburban community, auto-centric community, right? We have shopping centers and developments, we call them. And then we hit another stride of growth between 1960 to 1990. This was driven by a lot of suburban flight from local urban communities, the city of Chester, the city of Philadelphia, the city of Wilmington, the city of Camden. These are all major metropolitan areas close to us, people migrating out. And then we kind of topped out in the year 2000. And since then have been staying relatively flat in our population. And you can see from the pictures here, so we go from our industrial roots to the more suburban community and more even modern suburban community with, the kind of the McMansions in the past there. So, we had developed, though, like a sense of apathy, like we were kind of at a standstill in our community. One of the big challenges that we face here is our school district. So the Chichester School District regularly ranks in the bottom 10% of school districts in Pennsylvania for performance. And over time, our neighbors kind of moved past us there. So we have a neighboring municipality literally right across the border where they have a top 10% in the state school district. So people who could elevate themselves out and leave and move to those communities did. And then people that stayed behind kind of had this apathy of like kind of stuck in place. So that was one of our primary challenge. But I also think it's what makes us unique. So the other thing that was happening in 2005, we had our comp plan, right? So everybody does a comp plan. We had this big comp plan, and it was a iteration of the previous comp plan, and the previous comp plan of that, of doing everything we could to look at everything as Upper Chichester. And the problem was, because we grew up in these different times, each of these little areas kind of grew up in a different era. And when they grew up and then the next area got developed, there was a lot of like pushback on that, and it continued. So we were very like people in our town identify mostly from the area that they're from. So people from Twin Oaks, even though it's in Upper Chichester, will never say they're from Upper Chichester. They're from Twin Oaks. People from Ogden are from Ogden. People from Booth Wynn are from Booth Wynn. And we kept hearing that over and over, and we struggled to find a way to kind of overcome that. So we needed a new approach, right? So the old approach was look at everything at a high level, and it was really kind of like top-down driven. It was driven by the local elected leaders and the people who had, the loudest voice in the room. And we needed something different. We needed to find a way that we could celebrate these communities and bring them together. So the answer to that was the Community Heart and Soul program. So we started the Community Heart and Soul program in 2018. Candidly, this was actually brought to me by our librarian at the time. So she had got a hold of the workbook, and she brought it in, and she said, "George, I think you should read this. I think this would be something good for the community." And then I think it was almost a year later from then that I saw an email that this was going to be something that was available, that there were seed grants out there to get this started in your community. And I really, we jumped on it, and we ran with this. So, you can't do this without the partners. So Orton Family Foundation, Community Heart and Soul, PA Humanities, and PA Community Department of Community and Economic Development were huge partners. And what they did is they helped us with the funding. And then they helped us with the technical assistance to help us get through the process, build the capacity to be able to live those, to live the values and get those done. And really, it became about a couple things. First off, meeting people where they were. So, we were very good at hosting meetings at our municipal building, which is kind of off the beaten path and never having anybody show up unless there was a big problem. And we were very good at hosting events at our municipal complex, but we failed to get out in the community. So this was something that we really worked on, and the volunteer capacity, that team to get out in the community was huge with them. They went out into each of the individual neighborhoods. They collected surveys. They went to the HOAs. They got out there in the community events. So they included everyone, and they got out there in that group. Also, that team that got put together was a very diverse team that represented a really good mix of our community. We had wide age range, ethnicity, belief systems. I thought it was a really good sample of our community that got pulled together. And they got out there and they got authentic conversations one-on-one and really brought back what matters most to the community. So they collect these stories and they're working with the community and building trust and all along bringing more people into the fold who had not really realized that they could have a voice in the local government and they could have a voice in their community. So they activated this like large group of people still to this day that we see involved in various components throughout the state. So I'm sorry, throughout the community. And in doing that, what they did was they were able to collect these shared values, right? And they collected these shared values of the community and these data points, and they brought them together in this summit. And that picture to the left, that's Lauren. She was one of the leads. That's her with the sense of community value statement, and that was from the summit. So we get to the summit, and we really we had a great turnout this summer. It was a great time, and we got to really hear people, and they really kind of picked apart the value statements to kind of really get them to what mattered the most and what it was from the community, right? And then COVID-19 happened, right? So we are in the midst of trying to get this, like it's like such a positive thing. And then all of a sudden nobody can meet, nobody can get together. And I can't speak enough about the volunteers and how they adapted to that and the help of the partners, PA Humanities, Community Art and Soul, to really kind of get us set up virtually so that they could continue to meet and they could continue to process along. And that was huge for us. And they did a fantastic job. And that really, it was like this tornado that was going around in our community for a couple of years, kind of changing everything and really getting rid of that apathy and getting people really excited about being part of their local community, but then part of like, hey, this is like the whole, like we've got this big thing going on. So in the next slide, please. So the other thing is it would, you need the community, you need all those people, they drive this. But, Taylor stated, you got to have people to implement it, right? So if you don't have people bought into this, this was never going to work. So our first big milestone came June 9th, 2022. And that was when my Board of Commissioners voted to adopt the heart and soul value statements. And the reason I think that was like the biggest milestone is because I've had the same elected officials here in my tenure, which has been a decade now. And they've all been here at least. The shortest term was 6 years before I got here, some of them up to 10. So, this was a big change. This wasn't bringing new people in that were going to change their ideas. This was a group of people leading, saying we want to lead differently. So that was really, really great. And, we had the board was involved all along, being reported to as to what was happening with this. They were invited to the event. So there was really true collaboration there. So, that was a really, really big shift in our leadership. We also had a shift within our staff, right? So we had to get all of our staff on board to really buy into this. And we also had to recognize that maybe we had some positions that we needed to fill that would help us to better serve the community. And if you look at the picture there at the bottom, the blood donor, that's we have a blood drive here at the community building, and our employees regularly participate in that. But Aisha, all the way to the left, Aisha Hinson, she has been working with us now in our recreation department. She was just promoted to a position, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Administration. So really proud of her, of everything she does. And then our police department, they really bought into this idea of community policing and being out there in the community. And they've recently become an accredited department. So there's a really shift from there. And we also had to bring in all the partners. So, we work with a lot of different partners in coming up with, how the future of the community. So that comp plan on that last slide, we talked about the different communities. So we developed these little mini comprehensive plans for each of these communities that tie back up into our comp plan, which is driven by our community heart and soul values and our community heart and soul community guide. And these people on the right, those are external partners that we do business with. And each one of them, we sat down with throughout this process, involved them in various different steps, but then also at the end really said that this is what we're trying to do. And if you're going to continue to partner with us and we're going to partner with you, we really need you on board for this. And then, we went from a government-driven vision to a community-driven vision, and we adopted these value statements. And then the next huge milestone came October 13th, 2022, when the community action plan was adopted, and these value statements got items that we could put in place. So the value statements for us, these are things, these live on our wall, right? This is the core of all of the product of our government work. They help us guide our decisions. They help us guide our planning, our priorities. They are the beginning of every budget season, is going over these with every department, determining how we're going to best, how do we best serve the community through their values. Anytime we do a planning document, this is the start. And then we also took the process behind there of community engagement that we learned through Community Heart and Soul, and we use that more regularly throughout other elements of our job, where before we might have been more reliant on professionals to handle planning documents. Now we make sure that there's that community engagement approach as well for the professionals. And then the other thing too is we realized here with these value statements, the reality is the community is going to change. Every community changes over time, and these value statements might change. So we're consistently asking the community for more information and testing these value statements to make sure that they still are the value statements of the community. And really, this gave us our new way of listening, right? We no longer listen to the loudest voice. The loudest voice is not driving the decisions. The decisions are driven to the root of the community. Is this best for the whole? And it gives us the ability to look at various different perspectives on different things and really take into that account when decisions need to be made. And super collaborative, right? So the community is at the table now, as part of the decisions. The staff has felt more empowered to listen to other people and listen to other listen to community members and listen to community groups and figure out how to kind of take their wants and needs and move them into what the government operations are. And it really, it's like a shared responsibility for the oversight of the government in the future, right? It's no longer just the responsibility of the board, just the responsibility of staff. It's the responsibility of everybody to get involved and make sure it ends up being a good thing. And really, it's what matters the most to our community. And then what do we do with that? So we have our action plan, right? So our community action plan was a document that was put together at the end of the Community Heart and Soul program. And in it lists the value statements, but also, like Tyler mentioned, there's a list of actionable items that can be acted on. And ours was heavily involved on partnering with other groups to ensure that success. So over there on the left, so we started our own local historic marker program. This is a program in conjunction with the Chichester Historical Society. It's a way to recognize historical properties throughout the township that have local historical value. Maybe not necessarily something that would qualify for on the National Registry, but something that matters here. These get built in with anytime there's a development project that goes on, or if we're doing a park project or something that's in an area that we can kind of share a little bit of the history of the area. At the very top there, you'll see the old farmhouse. So, look, I'd love to say that everything is always roses, but we also know that every single community has challenges. So we had what would be considered the last remaining farm in our community was bought by a developer. It was zoned for industrial type commercial use. So they bought the property and went through approvals to put a warehouse in. What we were able to do is, working with the voice of the community and working with the Historical Society, we met consistently with the developer and were able to get them to take the home and relocate it on the site. So not only did they get to build their warehouse, but they relocated this home on that same exact site, just in a more prominent area, and have since rehabbed the exterior of the property, and they are currently looking for a tenant for the interior rehab. The photo to the top right, that's our town center. So for a very long time, since the 1800s, we didn't have a town center. We've been working really hard on creating this town center and building this out. And these are all community partnerships. That's our national night out. That's a national program with police departments. We partner with local municipal police departments in conjunction with ours to really kind of make that a larger scale community program. Bottom middle there, recently we were awarded an award for the for Best in Recreation from the Pennsylvania Recreation Society for our Delco Inclusive Dance. This was a program fully sponsored by local businesses and put on by our the school district, our recreation department, and our police department, which was a dance for special needs children throughout the community. It was really an awesome time with so much fun. And actually the next, we had second annual is next weekend. So pretty excited about that. And then to the right, this doesn't look much, but this is like my municipal manager picture because it's like just a dirty construction project going on, right? Not the pretty rendering, but this is actually like a $1.3 million park project. It's a renovate, and this was identified in the Heart and Soul guide. This was a community park for a small neighborhood park with not much going on there. And it's being converted into a regional destination with pickleball courts, all abilities, play equipment, a green area in the middle, lots of really cool things going on. And that was grant sponsored. We've been very successful in getting grants since going through this program. It was grant sponsored. We had developer fee in lieu money that they've helped throw in, and we also had private donors for that. So that was a really collaborative project with everybody getting involved. This next thing, though, on the next slide is really like our next big thing, right? So during this process, we were doing a whole bunch of other things that all you municipal managers have to do. And one of them was consolidating 3 volunteer fire departments down to 1. Public safety was identified in the Heart and Soul as a priority. So our fire company has moved locations to a more centralized location. So they'll now be at the center of town, so to help with response times and as well as just getting them into a little bit more of an updated facility. And in turn, they've leased back their engine bay space to the township for a new library. So the library here in Upper Chichester was started in 2000 by an Eagle Scout. It has been in a small 1,100 square foot storefront for 25 years. And they're about to get a huge upgrade. So this project was, again, grant funded. There's federal money, state money, county money, and local money going into this project, as well as some private donors. So this was really another collaborative project. And this is right in that town center area where I showed the sign earlier. And we see this as a community anchor for that area and for the future there. So, Community Heart and Soul looks different in every community. In our community, it really helped us figure out what the community wanted, what their values were, and helped us put those values into action. It's been a really great ride, and looking forward to seeing, how do we play the long game here, and what does that long game look for us?
All right, well, let's go ahead and kick off some Q&A. First question I've got is for you, Sarah, and that's, is there an opportunity for communities to apply for funding for Community Heart and Soul?
Thanks, Julian. Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that and tell everyone about what we have available through our Community Heart and Soul Seed Grant program. And this is really a great opportunity for communities who are ready to implement Community Heart and Soul. And so in our Seed Grant program, successful applicants receive a $10,000 grant. Now, part of that is a requirement to provide a 1-to-1 cash match for that $10,000 grant. And in order to participate, communities need to designate a project coordinator for their heart and soul work. And that's both them. Taylor talked a little bit about Jennifer. She was the project coordinator in Thomaston. That's a resident who is the project coordinator for the Heart and Soul team. Teams also need to work with a certified Heart and Soul coach. So every team has a coach who is working with the team and provides the training, the guidance, and the mentorship throughout the Community Heart and Soul process. There are a few things around eligibility. One is that community's population to engage in the Community Heart and Soul model needs to be under 30,000 residents. And we do accept applications for, like a county-wide effort or initiative, if that makes sense in that particular context. It may include multiple small cities or towns who are working together. Perhaps they're part of the same school district or part of the same zip code or something like that. That's something we'll discuss, on a one, it's a special consideration for those situations. As well, there really needs to be a clear demonstration of commitment from local government. Oftentimes that's a resolution or maybe a letter of support as part of that application. And anyone who's interested can learn more about our Sea Grant program on our website, which I think that's still up on this slide, communityheartandsoul.org. And while you're on our website, feel free to fill out the general interest questionnaire, or you can schedule a time to talk to us and to learn more about how your community can go forward with the Heart and Soul process and learn just a little bit more about the Sea Grant as well.
All right.
Thanks, Julian.
And another question is for you, Taylor and George. Both of you have completed the 4 initial phases of the Community Heart and Soul process. How have you continued to adopt and steward your H&S statements in your communities throughout the ongoing practice?
I think George nailed that with all that they've done. I think that's one of our challenges is how do you continue, especially post COVID, how do you continue to keep up the same engagement that you had during the Heart and Soul initiative? And I think the way that George has set it up, where from point A to point Z, especially the employee buy-in, that's huge to me. And the fact that every employee knows that we do this because of this, I think that's one of the biggest pieces. So I would definitely defer to him.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Taylor. So I think that that helped, right? Like, so we do not have a very large staff, right? Overall, I think with just under 80 employees. So it was, so it's a little bit easier for us to get things ingrained into our culture there. But that was definitely one of the things, is having it become part of the culture in the community. But also, the Community Heart and Soul group, they've formed a nonprofit, and they're out there still facilitating, and they're out there still ensuring that that everything in the book is getting everything in our community guide is getting implemented. So I feel like they're like our checks and balances too, right? So like they're still going, which is great, and they're helping keep things going. There's still a lot of people still remember the Heart and Soul process. It's still fresh. They see it when they come into the building. They see it out there. They see them at all of the community events. So like keeping it fresh and really getting people bought into it is important. But look, I mean, everybody struggles, right? There's days where I feel like we could be doing it better, and there's got to be a better way, or we need to move faster and love to move faster. And we just have to. I think one of the biggest things is with everybody with this is sit back from time to time and at every point and reflect how far you've come, right?
Mm.
And also, reach back out to those people that helped. Like, I mean, PA Humanities was our partner, and they were huge in helping us get through this. And like, just knowing that Community Heart and Soul, the staff is there, and knowing that PA Humanities is there, and like we just have all these people that just like they're rooting for your success, So you want to show them that you can do it.
Another thing for me when it comes to this is leveraging the data, right? I think a lot of this is a narrative, but how do you take advantage of the fact that, like for us, we were able to touch 7,000 residents. That's 7,000 data points that you can use when you're applying for grants, when you're trying to get like our rural zone designation through the state of Georgia. We use the data. We use all the things we did with Heart and Soul as part of that application. I think I saw someone commented in regards to comprehensive plans. To me, Heart and Soul is a piece of that comprehensive plan, right? The comp plan itself is massive, but this is a component, and it's how you tie it in. We took this Heart and Soul data and we roped it into into our downtown master plan. We took this heart and soul data and we roped it into our urban redevelopment plan, targeting neighborhood revitalization in and around our old mill neighborhoods. So it's all about how do you take this and incorporate this into the planning of your community.
Thanks. And we actually had a couple questions about that. If you want to expand on the how this fits into the comprehensive plan, if you had any input on that, George.
Yeah, so I mentioned before that we had these kind of like old school comp plans that were these big heavy books, and like there's always the joke about comp plans, right? It's a big heavy book, it's put on the shelf, nothing ever happens, right? So we through this process really helped us divide the community into those neighborhoods. So we're doing this like bottom up kind of comp plan now, and so there's kind of like three components, like Taylor said, like the heart and soul, like the community guide is part of it, right? But I think really more is like what we learned along the way, right? So we have the value statements. We have now we have a better way to communicate with the residents for engagement. So we have a better way to kind of put that litmus test on these things. And we have our guiding principles, the value statements, that tell us this is what our community values. So as we go through each of those components that are important to a comp plan, we can vet it and say, how does this relate back to, sense of community? How does this relate back to public safety? And then, diving deeper into the value statement of like, so people want, public safety that's, really community policing came out of this. This was a huge thing for us. So how do we build that out? So I think it's more of like just taking that whole process and building it into what we do on a daily basis, and really interweaving it into how to build your next comp plan.
Thank you. And another question, is this, I think this is about the grant funding. Is this similar to CDBG grants or the GLO grants?
Well, what I was talking about with the Community Heart and Soul Grant, seed grant program, that's a specific opportunity through Community Heart and Soul. That's specifically, it's not a CDGB or, it's specifically through our organization. Oftentimes, communities find, a couple different sources for funding to support their Community Heart and Soul initiative, which is why, ours is called a seed grant, because it's essentially that seed money to really get the program moving, get it started, get some momentum going. And oftentimes communities are looking at other opportunities for other funding sources along the way.
Yeah,
Now,
our
I'm not sure,
city,
Taylor, if
our
you could talk
city
about
and
CDBG
county.
or.
Yeah, our initiative was led by three groups. Well, four if you include. So Georgia EMC was the state agency that provided the heart and soul coach with Jenny Robbins and team, and then they worked in conjunction with Upson EMC, which is our electric co-op. That's kind of our county, power provider, and then we had our Upson County commissioners and our city of Thomaston council. They all came together, and so it was a joint project between city, county, and the EMC for our initiative. And how do you get buy-in from your electeds? For us, I mean, we were stuck. The community was stuck. It was stagnant. We were complacent. We had worked for 20 years to get over the mill crisis and the mill closure in this community, losing all those jobs, losing our identity. And it was, what's next? Who are we? What do we want to become? And with our proximity to Metro Atlanta, if any of our people on this call are in and around the Southeast, Atlanta, and Atlanta is exploding. I mean, our community could double in size over the next 10 years. And so we were at that tipping point of we need to put a plan in place now and be proactive for the future, because if we do not, this community will lose its heart and soul. This whole initiative is based on maintaining it, right? Maintaining the heart and soul of your community, and that's the people. And, I think this laid that foundation for Thomaston as our community grows over the next 20 years. We continue to maintain, the people and the things that make Thomaston special, the heart and soul of it.
Thank you. What have been some successful, unique, or unusual engagement strategies or activities that stand out from your experience?
We had one of them, again, so we COVID kind of broke up the whole process. But one of them was we had like an online Zoom. They did an online Zoom rock painting event. I thought that was really cool. That was grant funded through BA Humanities. Um, really it was like the things that worked was, again, getting out into the community, right? Like having people go out to the volunteer fire companies meeting, right? Having people go out to the HOA meetings, having people go out to the seniors group, having people go out to the churches, like meeting people where they are,
I also would like to say, one of the things that we learn at Community Heart and Soul is that communities and heart and soul teams and communities come up with the most amazing and fun ways to engage their communities. And one of the things that our team does at Community Heart and Soul is find ways to share with our coaches and share with communities all of these great ideas. And then oftentimes communities take those and like make them their own and come up with these fun ways to, think about all the different demographics in your community and how are you going to find fun and interesting ways to engage them. Young people, a certain age group. I remember an example, I'll just tell a quick story, an example from Thomaston where they were looking at all their different engagement activities and realize, well, there's one certain demographic that we really need to figure out how to engage them because we don't have a lot of information from them yet. And they developed an evening for the young professionals in Thomaston that was specifically targeted toward that group. And it was this great fun event. And it was something they planned all on their own. They figured it out. And we just see that over and over again with our heart and soul communities. It's really inspiring.
And that led to organically, we have a group of young guys that now put on a young professionals annual kind of meeting, get together, talk about opportunities in the community. Man, where's my thought process going? Come back to me. I'm sorry. My head's spinning 90 miles an hour. Yeah, just scratch it. I'm sorry.
No worries. How does, I think this is for you, Sarah. How does the model account for or navigate voices of dissent or minority perspectives expressed within the community?
That's a great question. And, something that I think is really, really important is that it's important to hear from everyone. You're not shutting out voices. But one of the things about Community Heart and Soul is that, kind of in the lingo, we say it's assets-based, but the general idea is you're starting with the positive. You really want to use that as like that ground to start conversations so that you can have more challenging or harder conversations in the future if you start with positive things about your community. I think the point is that, everybody, the whole point of Community Heart and Soul, that principle of involving everyone is to have the conversations to involve all parts of the community. And, oftentimes when you're talking with people in your community, just having the space to have a conversation and have that conversation civilly and understanding that everyone has different perspectives helps to open up that conversation for everyone to have their voices heard.
I was going to piggyback on that, and what I remember what I was going to say earlier. George had hit on it. One of the ways that we've really targeted, particularly our African American communities, through the local churches. We are a very racially diverse community, 60, 55, 45 split, Caucasian, African American. But our response from the African American community was minimal, before heart and soul. And now, our heart and soul group still kind of does their thing. But our new group that's really pushing initiatives is our GIC committee, which is a housing committee, because housing has become such a big piece for us. And it is the most racially diverse board that I have. And we need that. End of the day, how do we make this community better? My opinion is only one thing, right? I can't come into neighborhoods where I don't live, where I don't raise my kids, where I'm not working and say, here's how you fix your community. No, The city of Thomaston can be a partner, but then we have to identify those community champions is what we call them now, that can buy into the partnership that the city of Thomaston, the vision that the city of Thomaston is pushing, and they can go out there and leverage those connections and leverage their networks, because I can only sell to so many people, right? And especially when there's, distrust and there's not that rapport build, the more that I can bring in people that also want to see Thomaston be better, that can go out and share that information and speak on, look, they're doing this, we're working on this is coming. It helps make it an easier sell. And, I think that's how we found success with Heart and Soul, and then taking that same model in all of our decisions moving forward, we take that same approach, right? Building that foundation, that grassroots efforts of people supporting these positive quality of life investments in your community. Yes, we do need to understand what are the challenges, what are the issues, but then how we got to go from that and say, okay, how do we make it better?
All right. I think we only have time for one more question here. And that's any suggestions for motivating community members to provide their stories or input on what they want in their community, particularly when they appear to prefer to not be bothered about anything?
I can really quickly answer that. One of the things that coaches do with community heart and soul teams is find all different kinds of ways to engage in communities, and meeting residents where they are and finding ways to make engagement easy and make it fun and make it worthwhile and make it a point of connection. And that is really one of the things that coaches do with teams, is strategize and think about all the different ways to meet residents where they are.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I just want to thank Taylor and thank George for your time coming here today and sharing the stories of your communities, and for everything that you two and others in your community do just to make your places such wonderful places to live. And knowing that this is an ongoing practice of community heart and soul, we look forward to hearing all of the stories of future things happening in your communities.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
for
you
the
for
opportunity.
allowing me to be part of this, and anybody, if you're ever in Pennsylvania, southeastern corner, stop by Upper Chichester. We're getting better every day.
Same plug for Thomaston. We're an hour south of Atlanta. Come on down. Happy to host you. Would love to give you a tour. And Sarah, be on the lookout to get an invitation when we open our downtown farmers market, because that was the #1 most requested item from Heart and Soul. And so want to have you and your team there to celebrate that incredible investment in our community.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thanks, Taylor.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, with that, we must conclude today's webinar. A special thank you to our presenters and to everyone who joined us today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Please take a moment to complete a brief evaluation of today's program by returning to the ICMA Learning Lab page where you logged in today. The survey must be completed to unlock your certificate for this program. After completing the survey, you can access your certificate via the Achievements tab at the top of the interface. A recording of today's session will be uploaded to the same place you found the Zoom link in the Learning Lab, along with the slide deck in the Additional References section. Today's program is copyright 2025 by the International City County Management Association with all rights reserved. This concludes today's program. You may now disconnect.